Okay, we're back for part 2. We're now in Flame. We're going to do the same thing we just did in Nuke, but using our camera analysis tool. And we'll just see the kind of pros and cons of working up the same shot, doing this UV projection, and I'll walk through each step as we go, highlighting kind of things I like and don't like about the process. So I'm going to start with an action node. Just connect that to our clip and then hit Control N to bring up a new input, which is 1. I don't actually need this surface right now, so I'll just chuck it away. I do want to make sure I'm highlighted on the camera so that when I drag out the camera analysis, it'll create this symbolic link. So that's this green dotted line right here. When I'm ready to go, I just double click the camera analysis node, and I'm going to get our different options. There's not a lot, so it's pretty easy to walk through. I do want to set the resolution to 1, and I do want to change the quality to high. I'm going to double the amount of trackers. I think anywhere between the 3500, that's the default, and 12,000 can be fine depending on the shot. It just varies. I have not noticed it to speed up or decrease the amount of time that it has to analyze for. So we're going to assume we don't know anything about the shot. I'm going to hit analyze. And again, I said this in the last video, this is what I hate the most about the Flame interpretation of how they are doing camera tracking. It does not give me any kind of real guidance as to what's going on in the tracking itself or the solving. It's doing everything under the hood, but in a way that just doesn't feel representative of what's actually kind of being calculated. So even the progress bar itself, I feel like, is misleading because it jumps around, as you can see it doing right now, and it doesn't have a time. The numbers also jump around, and I feel like this could be enhanced and refined to be a better user experience. Even if I have zero control over what's happening, it might be nice if I saw some, blips happening, or, frames moving in and out, or even if it was just data moshing together. I don't know. It'd be a little bit more interesting than just watching this bar progress ever so slowly. And remember, I'm on a MacBook Pro M2, and it's the same computer I used to do the Nuke solve on. So we're kind of 1-to-1 for hardware. I'm going to pause and come back when we're nearly done. Okay, we're just about back. I have what seems to be a solve. If I hit F8, I will immediately see the point cloud, and then I can see kind of our point cloud over the rendered image, and this is kind of all our motion data. So also when I'm in that F8 view, I can move around quite easily and orbit with O, spacebar to move, and it's just a really easy way to kind of get a scene overview. What I want to do now, I can also just hit the Alt key to kind of rotate around as well, and Control and spacebar to magnify in and out. What I need to do is get rid of some of these points that are probably no good. I mean, this image is showing that the wall wraps around, which we know does not. So I'm not going to get too picky right now, but I am going to just turn these off. So under Refine, I can just disable them. I might actually just keep disabling a few other points that seem no good. I see a lot of these ones floating around that are probably not that useful. I wish it was a little bit easier to kind of get some of the ones that are kind of buried amongst other trackers. Sometimes I just kind of end up removing a clump just because it's easier. In this particular case, I think we have a really solid track and I'm not too worried. I do see this one that seems kind of annoying, so we'll just disable that one as well. Some of these ones that are just floating in space, even if they kind of look like they're locking, they don't make much sense to me. So I've gone ahead and disabled them. When I'm done, I'm just going to refine the solve. Unlike Nuke, it won't tell me my kind of error rate. I can't highlight any of these points to get any other data from them. So it doesn't really bother me too much, but I do find that it's just a little less savvy in that way in presenting information to us. Okay, so we've refined. I could do a little bit more to kind of remove trackers if I need to by using the threshold. I'm not going to in this case. Instead, I want to go ahead and just move to the next step, which is setting our ground and setting the origin. So much like Nuke, I'm just going to drag over the points that I want to be considered as the ground. I'm just going to hold Control and keep dragging in some areas. I'm going to hit F8 again just to kind of make sure that they're all lining up on the ground. Some of the ones that look like are sitting too high or low, I can hit Control and Shift and just drag over those ones and kind of take them out of the equation as being considered for the ground. So I'm just doing that on some of these top ones that seem to be floating just slightly above the surface, which makes sense because this ground was by no means even. I'm sure it looks like an old brick paved kind of medieval road. So this is what I'm considering the ground. I hit set ground, and then I need to set an origin, which is again kind of the nexus of our 3D scene. I'm gonna hit set origin, and now when I hit F8 again, you'll see that the scale has changed, and that's because we've now set the origin and the ground. So if I find it just too big to work with, because I'm zooming out with the control and spacebar and it gets pretty gnarly. So I'm just gonna wind this down to maybe 0.8, and now I have something that seems quite manageable. And remember, if I want to see this view and this point cloud inside our working views, I can just turn on show trackers for our result view, and that way it'll be with us when we get into kind of setting our card, which is our next step. So in Flame, I need to set what we call scene trackers, which is basically the foundation of where our card will go. So with these points selected, sorry that I keep doing that, I'm going to hit track and then scene trackers, which essentially just gives us a grid, but the most important thing is it gives us an axis. And this axis is the 3D data that we need to calculate where our card will lie. So again, in the F8 view, we're now seeing this grid that's lying on top of our ground. It takes one more step in Flame because I don't have a card. We could do a 3D shape and I could draw something out. I can also project our frame from here, but I'm gonna do it in a more traditional Nuke-esque way. So if you're coming from Nuke, it'll feel a little bit more familiar. So just in our batch schematic, I'm gonna drag out a color source. That's just an HD white frame. I'm gonna make a new input with Control N and attach it. I'm gonna make sure that it's zeroed out. We don't want any data on this axis, but we do want to make sure it's parented underneath our tracker. So when we do that, we now have our card. Since I'm in our kind of working view, I've hit space F4 to kind of get to our perspective view. And that way I can take a look at the scene and make sure everything is lining up. So that's our card sitting in our scene. If I want to see a different view, I have Shift 2, which is our front, Shift 3, which is our side, Shift 4, which is our top, and then Shift 1 brings us back to kind of our output or our result view, which is F4. So we have the card, but I don't have anything projected on it, and I haven't quite set the scale like we did in Nuke. So I'm going to go back to the top view and just going to change the scale. Just like in Nuke, right now I'm doing it through the data, the GUI down here at the bottom, but I could also do it through the card itself with E, which is our scale, and R, which is rotate, and then T is translate. Also, what you might have noticed is nothing really happened when I did this because this is scaling in Z, but we actually need to scale in Y. So I can also change our axis from world view to object to camera. So in object view, this is now giving me the range that I need. So now that we have that, let's check to see if our card is going to be in a position that makes sense for our scene. That looks good. I just need to go a little bit further, so we'll just drag this out. Obviously, you don't want to carry too much resolution. I don't want it to be so zoomed out that we've lost too much detail and filtering too much. So we have our card, but nothing is mapped to it. In Flame, there's a few ways to do this. Just for simplicity, like I said, we'll just kind of do this in the way that I think kind of mimics Nuke the most, would be to drag out a diffuse map. As you can see, I dragged out a layer that was highlighted, which was media layer 2. So this is layer 2, which is the white card. That's not what we want. Easy to fix. I could either just delete and start again, or I can assign the media. So if I right click, I can say assign media, and then I actually want this layer 1. So we'll just say assign media 1, and now it's piped in essentially a different layer, which is 1. When I double click the diffuse, I'm given some options. If I hit texture, here's our mapping. Right now it's set to UVs, which is just it mapping on the card. That's not what we want. We want to actually project onto the card, but we want to project through our default camera, which is the tracked camera. So I've now assigned a camera to it, and if I hit space F4, I will now see our scene projected through the camera onto the card. So that's exactly what we want. If I see the top view, it'll look very much like Nuke. That kind of just feels like a top-down still frame representation of the card, basically, or of the scene playing through this card. If we now add another camera, this is how we can basically do our paint work that we need to accomplish. So if I have our diffuse and card selected and drag out a camera, you'll see that it automatically links the card to this new camera that we dragged out. You can even rename it. We'll call this like still cam. And what you'll notice is right now we're still viewing the scene through this tracked camera. That works for seeing the scene, but we need to do our paint work and we need a different view. So I actually want to view the scene through this still camera. You'll notice I didn't change its location. I didn't move it. I dragged it in, and the default settings were perfectly applicable here because it's parenting to the card. So what's happening is we have, just go to the side view so we can see it, and I'm just going to highlight and select everything in the scene. The yellow right now is our tracked camera, so it's moving through the scene. This camera, which is now yellow, is our still cam, which is viewing from, it's basically locked onto the card because this card is laying flat right here, it's mapping onto the card from kind of a top-down view. You can see a good representation of it here. And because of that, we are now given this view that, more or less replicates what we got in Nuke. We had to take a few more steps to get there, but timing-wise, it takes about the same amount of time, even with the camera analysis, to get to this point as it does in Nuke. Once we have this, there's really just the same amount of steps that it takes to get to the finish line as a Nuke. I'm going to tell it in the paint node. I've said I want to paint on the sequence. The S key will let me increase or decrease the brush size, and then I hit Control to set the offset. Oops, but I'm not in clone. So when I hit Control, I can change the offset, and now I can just do some poor paint work. If we had more time, I would probably do this. Well, one, I would paint it a lot better, but I would also maybe use action to roto around bits that I want to keep. I'd probably use it maybe to even grab some patches and garbage mask them in and offset them and move them into the scene. It would render faster and it would probably look a little bit better. But for what we're trying to demonstrate today, I think this works for me. So now to kind of complete the process, I need to duplicate this node because I want all this data. So just right click, duplicate, and then this is our unmatted fill. This is our output that comes with the paint node. I'm just hitting F4 to see both the front and the matte. It is going to be attached to media 1, and let's see what happens. So now we just need to reverse everything that we did. So now the still cam is no longer where we want to view our scene through. We want to view through our tracked camera, and our diffuse map we want to view through the still cam. So now we've reversed everything. I just need to go to the media and turn back on the background, and now you'll see our scene is rendered. I have some paint problems. I think I didn't paint far enough, or I grabbed an area that was not so pretty. Now, one thing you notice is, unlike Nuke, I did not pre-multiply it, and there's a reason for that, because in Flame, the diffuse texture is set to unpre-multiplied. So if you've done it wrong, you'll notice, and you'll either see the white edge, or if you did pre-multiply it, so let's grab a comp node, and we'll just feed in a front and an alpha. And so incoming is unpre-multiplied. We want the outgoing to be pre-multiplied. So now when we feed this in, it looks right. If it had been on the default unmultiplied, you would notice there's a problem because you'll see the black edge as it is not interpreting the sequence properly. So it's an easy fix. If you run into it, it's just in the controls of the diffuse map. So that's where that is. Other than that, I think I like this way more, obviously, because I'm a Flame person at heart. But what I don't like is that I wish that we had a tool built in that gave us the same view that and the same option that Nuke has through the UV projection. I feel like there has to be a better way. I don't know if this is the way that it was intended to be used for. I used to just drag in a camera and try to set the view. What I'd really like, if we're being honest about this, is to be able to just literally render out the top view and then inverse that. What I used to have to do is kind of keep mimicking a way to to create a top view and then obviously invert it, but I can't invert it from just a view. So I actually need a camera. So I would have to put a camera in that does this and then kind of reverse it. I find it much easier just to do it this way. For most things, I think this works out tremendously well. There's actually going to be a part 3 where we look at the original mono analyzer camera tracker for Flame and do the same thing, just because I think that is the most familiar to what Nuke people know, but also it'll give me a chance to kind of just showcase, one other technique, just to kind of put a bow on this whole little series we've done. Please reach out if you have any questions. I appreciate all the feedback I've been given thus far, and I have to say it's really fun to do these, so I really appreciate any comments that you guys have. Thanks. Bye.